In a few minutes, we will hear from a man whose compelling life story is about commitment, about being all in. Mr. Jean-Paul Gonzalez, John devotes his time and talent to teach and assist disadvantaged youth in northern New Jersey and how each one of them can make a positive difference in the world. Today, like many days outside the education centers, Mr. Gonzalez provides inspiration and suggested practices on how we can recruit, retain, engage, and even inspire employees. He's eternally grateful to those in his life who were all in for him, and he continues to pay it forward. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the story of John Paul Gonzalez.
All in. All in.
All in.
All in. All in.
To understand how two words
All in.
turned a New York Giants season going nowhere into a trip to the Super Bowl, you got to go back to the night before Christmas Eve. The Giants were 7-7, and they'd lost 5 of their last 6.
I think there's some empty graves out there that people were digging for the Giants.
There was definitely something missing.
That night at a players' chapel meeting,
We had a young guy come in and speak.
He delivered one of the most timely messages that I've had, not only in my football career, but in my life.
his name is John Paul Gonzalez, a 9th grade teacher and speaker in nearby Union City, New Jersey. He's friends with the Giants team chaplain who asked him to speak to the team. Were you nervous?
Oh, yeah, definitely. Definitely. I mean, you go in a room and you see like Eli Manning in the front row, and then you see Justin Tuck, and you see these guys, and you're like, wow.
Gonzalez turned out not to be just a teacher of kids. He turned out to be a teacher of giants.
He kind of put everything into 2 words, all in.
He gave everyone poker chips, had everyone put their initials on the poker chip, and advised us to keep it with us. When you have something that you feel can't be beat, you know, what do? You throw it all in.
The next day, the Giants whipped the Jets 29-14.
Handoff Bradshaw. He's going to run right through a tackle. Touchdown Giants.
Afterwards,
It was all in today. Went to chapel last night and our speaker talked about all in. And today, you could just tell the Giants was all in.
and before you knew it, All In had worked its way all around the Giants locker room.
It's just something that became, infectious, wanting to give more effort, wanting to stay behind and watch more film.
Ever since then, everybody, all 53 guys, 46 on game day, they're all in.
The next week, they beat the Cowboys, punching their playoff ticket.
The New York Giants are the NFC East champions.
Then the chaplain again sent me a message and said, you wouldn't believe this, but they made towels for the game.
It's not about individual, it's just everybody being 100% dedicated to the team.
Then they dismissed the Falcons at home in the first round of the playoffs, and a week later, they went into no less than Lambeau Field and shocked the 15-1 Packers.
The New York Giants have eliminated the number 1 seed Green Bay Packers. They're all in.
The chip is a chip, but it's our minds, that are powerful. What's going to give you that extra edge? What's going to give you that extra push?
And that's new since you dedicated yourself to All In.
I don't think I was giving it 100%. I might have been giving it 90%. But now I think, for the last 5 weeks, I've been definitely giving it 100%.
The 49ers in San Francisco, the NFC title game, jackpot.
The Giants in overtime have won the NFC Championship.
All the way down, to the custodians, to the cooks that we have here within the facility. And when I say all in, I really mean they're all in.
You came up with it. Doesn't that feel great?
It does. But I know it's a lot of tribute to their hard work.
If you win this Super Bowl, what will you do with the chip?
I'll probably flame that chip, in all honesty, and make sure I keep it by me, at all times.
I'll probably keep it next to my Super Bowl ring.
Do you think you'll get a ring?
I wouldn't turn one down.
It is a tremendous privilege and honor to be with you. But before I start, is anybody here by any chance a Giants fan? We have some? Yeah? Just a couple? Who is the amazing young woman I met earlier? Is she here? Who is a Giants fan I met in the right? I have something for you. I work with the Giants, and obviously can't dress like this on the sidelines every Sunday with the team. And unfortunately, we lost to this team in Philadelphia in the playoffs, whatever. We won't mention them, but we had a lot of stuff left over because we were hoping to go a little bit further. So this is the official sideline hat of the Giants. Could I give this to you right here real quick? Here you go. Pleasure. Always just try to honor people who stick with us when we were 3-14 3 years ago. But just to be fair, of course, do we have any Eagles fans here? Yes, yeah, okay. Yeah, you were this close. Cowboys? We have any Cowboys here? Yep, yeah. That's always the response, and you're going to win the Super Bowl every year. I'm sorry. And I hate to ask this one, but any New England Patriot fans? Okay. Did you guys already talk about cheating and integrity, Rick? Did you guys already do that? Okay, no problem. Oh, no. Sorry. I'm sorry, just having fun. Oh. Yeah, 17-1, right? Chiefs, yeah, you already won. It's okay. Nah, they're good. We could go on and on, but as you heard in that video, you'll know that I'm not a professional football player. You'll know that, as you heard in the video by ESPN, when the Giants called me up, my regular job is teaching 9th grade world history. A freshman world history teacher in high school is my regular occupation. And so honestly, when they called me up, I thought it was a joke. I thought it was a prank, right? Wouldn't you? Why would the Giants call up a 9th grade world history teacher? Talk to Eli Manning about Julius Caesar doesn't make a lot of sense. They said, no, Mr. Gonzalez, we understand what you do. Can you speak to our team, yes or no, this Friday night? Now, I live in Union City, New Jersey, which is about 5 minutes from MetLife Stadium where they play their home games. So I figured, even if this is a prank, I could always turn my car around and still have my Friday night. But I pull up to the security guard gate, I give my name, and they say, Mr. Gonzalez, we have been waiting for you parked to the right. I start to get nervous. I walk in the team room for the first time, and I remember one of the first players to stand up and shake my hand. It was Chris Canty. He was a defensive lineman on the team at the time. And in case you didn't know, Chris Canty's about 6'9", give or take 320 pounds. And when he shook my hand, I vividly felt his fingers go all the way down to here on my wrist. And I remember he looked down at me and, half joking but still very serious, he simply said, you better tell us something good tonight. No pressure. I spoke to the Giants for 20 minutes, 18 to be exact, because Coach Tom Coughlin was very precise about his meetings. And I remember when I walked out of those team room doors, if you had gone up to me and asked me how I did, I would have told you it was a failure. I would have said it was a complete waste of time. I would have said maybe the only reason they seem to be paying any attention that evening is because they have a team rule, and it's quite simple. If you're on your cell phone during an official team meeting, you can get fined starting at $5,000. As a teacher, I wish we had had that in the classroom, but it's not as important. See, the interesting fact is, as leaders in our communities, as servants in our communities, I think we could honestly say we feel that pang in our heart sometimes more than we'd like to admit. Are they listening? Do they really get why this matters so much? Why don't they care as much as I do? Some days you walk back to your car and you wonder, is it worth it? All the pain, all the heartache, the times you miss dinner with your family. But see, it's interesting because even when they look like they're not listening, even when it looks like when they're least paying attention, we don't need to watch It's a Wonderful Life to be reminded of the fact that our words and our actions have way more power than we realize. And it's not just when we're on stage or an official meeting. It's in the conversations in the hallways. Conversations maybe, that interrupt your daily pace of schedule. But as you heard from Jeffrey, you're present. You give time for it. And honestly, when I walked out of that room, like I said, I thought they could care less about a 9th grade world history teacher from Union City, New Jersey. But I was wrong. They start to win. They win the next game and the next game. And I remember getting a phone call from the team chaplain saying, hey, I think the players really enjoyed what you spoke to us about being all in. We actually qualified for the playoffs. We made towels for the game, as you heard. And I said, well, you're professional athletes. I'm pretty sure you're paid to do all that. I doubt it's anything I said, but they continue to win. They win the next game and the next game. Before I know it, I start get having news agencies start to call me up asking if I could do interviews on their morning shows. I tell them I have to be back in time for homeroom because I do attendance, but they work it out. They pull up the limousine at 5:30, get me back by 6:45, which can start attendance at 7, and they continue. Eventually, ESPN pulls up in front of my high school, and they tape that piece you saw, and they say, Mr. Gonzalez, if the Giants beat the 49ers in the NFC Championship game, we'll play that Super Bowl Sunday in front of the world. Giants beat the 49ers. They play against the Super Bowl against your Patriots, and I remember I started to get invitations to actually attend the Super Bowl. But I knew if I went to the Super Bowl, I was going to miss teaching my students for at least 5 days. So as a good teacher, I remember calling the team back and saying, no, thank you. Also, as a teacher, I'd used up all my sick days, so I couldn't take off anyway. You guys understand that a little bit, right? Yeah? Yeah. I kind of burned them early. We'll just leave it at that. And I do remember walking to school the day after the Giants beat the New England Patriots in the Super Bowl, and as I turned the corner to go into my building, I noticed that there's news vans lined up down the block in the front of my school. I barely get to my front steps, and my principal's waiting there. He said, hey, listen, don't even go to your classroom. We already got a substitute to cover your classes. Just get to the conference room. Go to the conference room, and there's reporters, CBS, NBC, ABC, even CNN Espanol had come up from Mexico. And my Spanish is not the best, but the Spanish teacher came down. She translated. Great collaboration. I've gotten better since then. And the next day, I don't walk to school. I run to school, right? I mean, wouldn't you? Who's going to maybe put you on TV today, a podcast? A little bit of an Oprah fan, thought she might be waiting with a car, something big. And I run to school, and I turn the corner, and it's nobody. We all know fame is just that quick, isn't it? And teaching my students in high school and now as a college professor, I always remind them that when you really study history, you find out that fame is what people did for themselves, but greatness is what people did for others. Fame is what people do when they're trying to do self-preservation, right? How long can I look good? But greatness is the opposite, isn't it? It's self-sacrifice. How much can I give to improve the life of just one person? And it's not easy to live that way. It's challenging. It's hard. But it's worth it. Because I'd wager you're not in this room today because you chose fame. Lord knows you could do something else and be a lot more famous. I'd argue you're in this room today because you chose greatness. You might not get the fanfare other individuals get. Might not get the notoriety when things go well, but you certainly do get the blame when they don't. But you chose greatness. And yeah, as my students tell me, Mr. G, greatness doesn't go viral. I'm like, yeah, you might be right, but it's worth it. Because also chances are you're in this room because someone chose greatness before you and you saw it, and it captivated you. It made you come alive. And you started saying, man, if I could do it like her, if I could do it like him, I would like to be that. I remember with no cameras and no reporters, I signed my name in that Tuesday morning, and I start on my way to the classroom. And secretary interrupted me. She said, actually, Mr. Gonzalez, you have a phone call. It's from the team. They're having this victory parade in New York City. They wanted to know if you could join them. I get permission from my principal, and as I go into the city, I start to see T-shirts. Now, naturally, the first T-shirts I see, I think that's a coincidence, maybe a certain vendor, but I see hundreds and thousands of the same shirt. Finally, one of the players hands me a shirt, and he said, hey, Mr. Gonzalez, the 2 words you talked to us about 7 weeks ago, we voted as a team to only put those 2 words on our official Super Bowl championship shirt. In fact, we're even going to engrave it on the inside of our Super Bowl rings. Still waiting for my ring. That's okay. And the shirts and the 2 words were all in. And I said, man, that's great. So naturally, I go back to show my students. In first period, they think it's phenomenal. By third period, they could care less. And I remember I put the shirt on my desk, and by third period, the phone begins to ring, and I pick up the phone, and a voice said, are you Mr. Gonzalez? I said, yes. He said, the same one that spoke to the Giants, they went on to win the Super Bowl. I said, yes again. Now, at this point in the conversation, though, the voice changes drastically. Starts yelling through the phone, saying words I'm not going to repeat up here in front of you. Quite angry. I finally interrupt the voice. I said, sir, who are you? Why are you so angry? He said, well, Mr. Gonzalez, I'm the football coach for the high school where you work. He said, man, you really could have told us about All In. We could have went and done that too. And I said, Coach, I didn't know about that. I mean, Rick, you know that. And I didn't know it was going to have that effect. And he said, well, we start preseason conditioning in 2 weeks. you better make sure you're down here in this weight room with my I said, Coach, of course, they're my students too. And 2 weeks later, I walked down to our weight room and I noticed every football player is actually already wearing a t-shirt. And we put 2 words on our football t-shirt in Union City, New Jersey. And just, Union City, New Jersey, we do things a little bit differently. We don't have as much room to actually have a football field next to or adjacent to our high school. So interesting enough, we actually built our football field 4 stories up on the roof of our high school. Some people don't believe me when I say that, so I always just try to bring a picture if that's okay. Yeah, that's us on a Friday night. As you can tell, it's totally safe. No one falls off after a touchdown. No, totally safe. One end zone, you can kind of see, MetLife Stadium where the Giants play. Other end zone, you see the New York City skyline. It's, we're called the Eagles, so we call it the Eagles Nest, and it's kind of above everything in the city. And like I said, it's fun. The kids love it. And I said, we're done. 2 weeks later, there was another phone call. Mr. Gonzalez, yes, you spoke to the Giants. Yes, Mr. Gonzalez, would you share for our team? I said, sure, give me your address. I could try to drive. They said, actually, Mr. Gonzalez, we need you to take the first plane to Chicago. I said, well, I'm an educator. I can't really just fly to Chicago on a Wednesday night. They said, no, we knew that. That's why we called your superintendent first. He's actually giving you tomorrow off. In that case, I said, sure. And in Chicago, there's a team waiting in the NBA. They're called the Portland Trailblazers. And yeah, there we go, yeah. And, they put 2 words on their T-shirt, and they said, hey, could you come to the locker room, tell us what this means? We're going to play the Bulls tonight. We saw that video on ESPN, and, great group of guys, great team. They haven't won a championship yet, so we're not going to talk about them anymore, but we're getting there. Yeah, we got a good draft pick, right? Good draft pick. And then a call from a team in something called the National Hockey League, and they said, well, we saw your piece, and we're a hockey team in Minnesota. We're called the Minnesota Wild, and yeah, there we go. And they put All In on the back of their jerseys, and got a little bit further in the playoffs, and and that was a good thing. And then a phone call from London, England. And they said, Mr. Gonzalez, we know you work with American football teams, but here in London we play real football, which of course is soccer. And I said, well, I'm not as familiar, but I do enjoy watching. And needless to say, eventually you fly over to London, and it's a team in something called the English Premier League. They're called the Arsenal Football Club. Yeah. And they put All In on the back of their shirts, and just this close, second place this year, but we're getting there. And then corporations begin to get involved. And I remember first it was corporations like PNC Bank, where you speak to some of our bankers on the weekends, and General Motors with our car companies. And then a phone call saying, Mr. Gonzalez, will you come down to Arkansas? Personally, I'd never been to Arkansas before at that time, but turned out to be an organization, you might have heard of them as well. They're called Walmart. And I was like, all right, I shop at Walmart. That's not a problem. They said, actually, Mr. Gonzalez, this is not a local Walmart. This is our shareholders meeting. It's a very important day for us here at our headquarters here in Bentonville. And I didn't honestly realize how important it was until I remember I was sitting backstage quite nervous, and looking to my left, I noticed that to my left was Tom Cruise, the actor. And so immediately I wanted to get up and shake his hand, but then I realized in person that Tom Cruise is only about that tall. I was surprised, but great actor, Mission Impossible, who doesn't love Top Gun, but I would say the greatest honor for me. A lot of the students I work with, they enjoy playing video games. And one game that's been quite popular as of late goes by the name of Call of Duty. You interact with the life of a soldier, complete different missions. You might have heard of it. I remind them that though that's all good fun, it's one thing to play a video game. It's something else entirely different, getting the actual privilege to work with our armed forces. First, I was working with our cadets at the West Point Military Academy, not far from where I live, and then with our Air Force, and then every summer it's been a privilege to step on bases throughout our nation and get to work with our United States Army. And one of the bases, they actually put this on the back of their training shirts, because I feel there's no one better to represent being all in than our armed forces, men and women who give their lives for liberties and freedoms we get to enjoy. Yeah, give them a round of applause. Amazing. Amazing what they do. But when we come down to it, the truth of the matter is, at the root, these are just T-shirts, aren't they? They're a representation of something much deeper. But the sad part is most people will never truly understand. As we said earlier, some people that will never get why you care so much, why you give so much. And if you're like me, you got a great family and loving spouse, and they sit at the dinner table and listen, and they say, oh, that's really frustrating, honey. I'm sorry. At least they can give them the evil eye at the parties at the end of the year, and when you can't, They try, and we love them for trying. But some days it just feels lonely. I remember being in San Diego not long ago, an individual came up to me and said, Mr. Gonzalez, thank you for sharing, but I think you're wasting your time. I was taken back by the comment, maybe someone told you that before too. He said, please don't take any offense. He said, see, this all-in thing, it's just a great slogan. He said, personally, I work in marketing. I come up with slogans all the time for our company, and I get paid by how many times people touch it or click it. But he said, I don't understand. Why do you still live in Union City where you were born, where you were raised? Why do you still work with students? He said, no offense, there's just not a lot of profit in public education. I said, thank you for reminding me. But I said, that's not why you do it. I said, personally, I don't feel that's why you should really do anything. Just profit. We all have bills, but not that. He said, well, I'm just trying to tell you, it's on t-shirts, it's on wristbands. He said, if you haven't noticed, they were even putting at the end of Adidas commercials for the World Cup. Pretty sure they didn't give you any royalties. And he said, I've just found in my life that it's really going to matter how much you make per year to make a difference. I said, sir, I'm going to tell you a short story and then I really got to go. See, I began to tell him about a young woman who was sitting in a doctor's office. Most time we're there, we prefer not to be there, just want to get it over with, get better. But as she's sitting there, she's actually ecstatic. Her name is called. She gets up, she runs past the nurse into the examination room, sits up on the table and lays back. She's so excited to be there that day because she's pregnant. As the images flick around the screen, everything seems great except the doctor walks out of the room, the nurse follows. The nurse returns with a small card in her hand, hands it to him on the table, and then exits. The woman's curious, so she opens up the card, begins to read it, and says, we're sorry to inform you, but you've contracted the measles. Nothing's wrong with getting the measles. You get some small bumps on your body, a fever, a flu, a couple of weeks it passes, but if you get the measles during this stage, we fear it's going to have very dangerous side effects. Also on the card it said, we cannot see certain limbs developing properly. We cannot see a properly developed arm or leg. And on the bottom of the card it said, in safety precautions, we would advise the possibility of termination. Try again later at another time. The woman's crushed. She turned to me absolutely elated to distraught in a matter of moments. The nurse returns to the room and said, Miss, I know this is very challenging, but how would you choose to proceed? The woman sits up off the table. She says, thank you for your opinion. Thank you for your advice. But I think I'm just going to try to stick with him. Whether he makes it for 2 more weeks or for 20 years. Whether he has one properly developed arm or no arms for that matter. That's my choice. That's what I'll choose to do. And honestly, I'm so thankful for that woman because, see, that woman is my mom. And I was the child inside of her. Whether I'm doing an interview on CNN or speaking to the Giants tonight before a game, when people ask me what does all in mean to me, that's what I tell them. It's not really a t-shirt. It's not a wristband. Honestly, it's not even a Super Bowl trophy. And don't take that the wrong way. It's a privilege to work with the Giants every week. I know it sounds a bit odd, but about 7 years ago, they asked if I would join their team. I told them the students I work with in my community have to come first. And interesting enough, they said, okay. Long story short, it means I get to work with students during the week. And at 10:55 a.m., I have to report to the Giants training facility, fly with the team for every home and away game. And if you look closely, Sunday night, September 10th, when we take on the Cowboys on Sunday Night Football, you'll probably see me on the sidelines. And trust me, it's really fun, getting to give Saquon Barkley a high five after a great touchdown. And if you're wondering, his legs are that big in person. But that's not all in, is it? Being committed to something when it looks good, feels good, works well. Now, see, the reason I talk about my mom is because most days that's what it looks like for us. Being committed to something. We have no guarantee of success. We have no assurance of victory, retention for our teammates. There are no promises. And yet we show up the next day on Wednesday and Thursday. We give our best. We try to connect. And it's hard. It's challenging. It's the funny thing with leadership. You don't know until you get there that it's really not as glamorous as it sounded. It's interesting with the Giants, when they vote on their captains every year, I try to go through a little program with them, and needless to say, we go over the root of the word leader. This is the root of the word leader. It's Germanic. We don't use the language anymore. But that's where we get the word leader from. And the direct translation was a military one. It meant he who goes into battle first, or goes forth first. Now you don't have to be a history major like myself to realize that if you're running into battle first, ahead of the rest of your army, we'd love to say all the attack is going to come from out there, right? The enemy on the other side. But if you're running ahead of everyone else, where could you also get hit? In the back. I don't need to ask you if you've ever been betrayed before. I don't need to ask you if people might be mentioning your name in not such a great way back home at this moment. It's hard. And it's tough. And if you didn't know, in that time in history, the person who went into battle first typically did not have a sword and shield fully equipped. Oftentimes they were charged with carrying a banner to inspire those around them. A little bit defenseless. Sounds like leadership. Taking fire sometimes from all sides, comments, having to absorb, and still trying to hold on to values, principles that you've talked about all week. Inclusion, connection, to give someone else hope. It's not an easy thing to do. And sometimes it can just get downright tiring. See, one of the things I've realized in working with the students I work with in my community, in the juvenile detention centers, and the Giants, you name it, is that we get this idea that we're on a Rambo mission, right? Jason Bourne, if you will. Got to do it all by ourselves. I've never seen that to actually work. And so if it's okay with you, and you can blame Rick, he started it, I was wondering if we could be a little bit interactive. Is that okay? For the last couple of minutes we spent together, is that okay? All right. So you might have noticed that at your table, some tables, not all tables, some tables, there is a rod, a plastic rod of some sort with like some metal. If you have it, could you hold it up really quick with your hands? Could you hold it up? If you have one at your table, okay? One at the table over there and over there. All right, so I know we don't have, oh, don't ruin it yet, please, thank you. So we do this with the Giants every training camp, and I've done it with much others. So if it's okay, now if you're busy writing a work email, that's totally fine. I'm in professional development all the time as a teacher, I get it. But if you can press pause, that would be awesome. If you could stand up. Could we do that really quick? Stand up, yeah? Don't worry, you don't have to clap for me, just stand up. Yeah, everyone stand up, yeah? Okay, I know. And then if you could find the closest rod to you, but we want to try to make some type of circle or like rectangle where we could all be in contact with each other. So find a rod and maybe 20 or 30 people just form a circle or an octagon or a polygon or something like that. Hold the rod up if you have it. I think we have one over here. We have one right here, one over here, one in the back, one there. We have one over there, one in the middle over there. Now, is it possible to make a circle, single circle that like everyone could fit in? Everyone could fit in the circle. Everybody could fit in the circle. So maybe you got to expand it a little bit, move around the tables, expand it. All right. All right, everyone around, try to make it like a single. It doesn't have to be, it could be like an amoeba shape. That's totally fine. Totally fine. All right. Now, with that being done and everybody's kind of, single file, like side to side, nobody's behind, nobody's in front, just everyone, I'm going to ask you to do something slightly uncomfortable. I'm going to ask you to hold hands with the person next to you. Now, you don't have to intertwine fingers as they just did. That's very cute. You don't have to do that. But that's cute. They did it. They might know each other. Maybe they don't. That's great. So holding hands with the person next to you, don't worry, I won't make you do this long. I need the person who has the plastic stick, or someone from your table grab the plastic stick, and I'm going to ask you to not hold hands with the person next to you, but just hold the metal piece. And the person on the other side of you to hold the other metal piece. Just the metal piece. Cool. Is it working for you? Yeah, hold the metal piece tightly. Cool. Is it working for you guys right here? Yeah? No, it's not. Everyone holding tight? Yeah? Where's the metal? Oh, now it's working. There we go. Working for you guys over there? No? Everyone holding tight? Oh, there you go. Just the metal piece. And you have to keep holding. Miss, you have to keep holding. Yeah. And you're holding? Just a metal piece, yeah? Everyone holding tight? Is everyone connected? Oh, okay. Hold them right here. Okay, cool. All right. And you got it? You got it? All right, there we go. There we go. All right, you can stop holding hands. All right, give yourself a round of applause. All right, now before you go, I wouldn't have made you guys do this, except you guys kept on mentioning connection all the time, so I felt like, oh man, I gotta do it now. And Rick started it, he was interactive first, so blame your president. But I would just say, when we do this with the Giants, well, before the Giants, I did it with the team called the Raiders. Justin Tuck went to the Raiders and he said, hey, bring this guy in, speak to the team. You know, last time I heard him speak, we won the Super Bowl. They went 0-8. It doesn't always work, but we did it with the Raiders. They had a wide receiver on their team. Cool guy, his name was Amari, and he swore I had a button in my pocket. I was pressing it to turn the lights on. No offense to Amari. I think maybe you've had a little bit more education. That's all I'm gonna say. Nothing against Alabama, roll tide. But can someone just tell me, shout out, how did that work? Teamwork, but what specifically, we formed an electrical connection that went from the top of your head to the bottom of your foot, out of your body, into the next person's body, into the next person's body. And the second one person stopped holding hands, it broke. See, the funny thing about electricity doesn't have bias. It doesn't say, you know what, you stopped holding hands, it's okay, you're not important anyway, we're just gonna skip you, this is still gonna light up. Can't do that, can it? Everybody's gotta be connected. Everyone's gotta be holding hands. You know who has bias? I do. As a 9th grade world history teacher, the 8th grade teachers tell me who was coming in my classroom. And when I would welcome them at the door, oh, so you're Jose. Okay. Oh no, I know your name. I know your name. What do I choose to do with it from that moment on is up to me. Do I choose to connect? Or do I choose to say, trust is earned? And I'm not saying we put ourselves in abusive relationships, but I am saying there is something about if before our resumes looked as good as everyone's resume in this room looks, someone gave us a shot. Someone gave us some grace. Someone gave us some trust. And that's why we're in this room right now. Because they said, I know you're not there yet, but I think you can be. Isn't that the truth? The best leaders we had in our life started believing us before we started believing in ourselves. Yeah. See, if you didn't know, I asked you to do something uncomfortable though. You had to hold hands. And in ancient Rome, the handshake was invented. It was invented because they carried daggers about 6 inches long on the right-hand side, which meant if I shook your hand, I'm not gonna stab you at the same time. It was a trust mechanism. That's why they actually believed, and you might have heard, that left-handed people are inherently evil because you could still shake someone's hand and stab them in the abdomen in one motion. Any lefties here? Any lefties? All right, put your hands down. Careful. Nah, I'm joking, but you had to connect. And trust me, I've only been working 15 years, but in systems and communities and government. But we've all been burned before, can we admit that? We've been hurt before. And it's really difficult not to get cynical. It's really difficult not to just be like, you know what? I'm good. But I just really encourage us. Put our hands out. Will we get blisters? Yeah. Could we get burned again? Of course. But what you guys did was amazing. Because see, one of you could take that stick and hold it and you could light it up all day. But that's not that cool, no offense. What's cool is what your group did, your group did, your group did. You had to be connected. There's an African proverb, I'm sure you've heard it. It says, if you want to go fast, you go alone, but if you want to go far, you go together. It's true. Our new coach of the Giants, Coach Dable, after our last preseason game, we were ranked to finish 6-10, which would have been an improvement from the year before, honestly. But I'll just remember the words he said. He said, guys, good teams are committed to winning, but great teams are committed to each other. Stick with each other, and I think we'll like how the season ends. And I just remember the feeling in that locker room when we beat the Minnesota Vikings, a team we had lost to on Christmas Eve 2 weeks earlier, on a last-second field goal, when we beat them on the last play of the game to stop them before they scored a touchdown. He said, thanks for staying together, guys. Thanks for staying committed to each other, not just to the idea of winning, not just to your contracts. Now, it didn't work against the Eagles, but hey, one step at a time. And so also because you guys are awesome leaders in so many areas, what you have in your hands, some of you have in your hands, it's called an energy stick. It's like $9 off of Amazon. I think it was just Prime Day. You could get it for cheaper. I use it with every team, every student I've ever worked with. We're such a visual society. I was speaking on an educational panel the other day, and one of the child psychologists said something I thought was rather pertinent. She said, we work with a generation right now that listens with their eyes. They listen with their eyes. I think that's true about all of us. We've become a very, very visual society. So the more we can analogize things with visuals, I believe it helps cement a point or something we're trying to bring across to the teams we lead. So like I said, it's an energy stick. If you have one in your hand, congratulations, you got a prize. But yeah, they're not hard to get off of Amazon. If you have Prime, they could be at your house tomorrow. I don't get any residuals from them. I'm just saying it's a cool thing, and it can work with up to 1,000 people. It can still light up. It's crazy. I would say though, just check the batteries before you use it. Nothing's more embarrassing than having a bunch of grown men and women holding hands. And it does, I was feeling a little nervous back there before you guys got it working. But yeah, check the batteries. It's just a cool visual tool maybe you could use with your teams, the people you lead. Maybe it's, Rick, your football team, or, just maybe even in your own family. I've done it with my family saying, Bella, that we need to be connected, right? And she's 6 years old, and she doesn't like the stick anymore, but it is cool. So if it works, you guys, you may take a seat, give yourself a round of applause. Awesome job, guys. Awesome. All right. You can stop playing with it. Thank you. I know it's tempting. It's tempting. It's fun. It's cool. You're fine. As we talked about, guys, one of the first things about being all in is not trying to do it by ourselves. It's being connected. You guys get that. That's why you're here. That's the name of why you're here for this past week. But like we just said, being connected, and like I heard at this platform before, it's a risk. An interesting graph that was thrown up at a corporate event I was at that said the two common attributes, this is researched by a number of different departments, it said two common attributes of great leaders is curiosity and risk-taking. See, I'll be honest, I wasn't so good at either of these. My dad played football for the Raiders, so I thought I was going to play football like him growing up. I had a bit of an idol. His name was Dan Marino. He's quarterback of the Miami Dolphins. I wanted to be just like him. Hispanic version, but just like him. And I got to high school, and let's just say I started to get hit, and my parents said, no more football in this house at this point in time. We want you to wait a little bit, because my dad got a pretty serious injury from it. I switched to basketball, and I started to realize, let's just say our basketball team wasn't so talented. And every time we lost, I hated the fact that people came up to my lunch table and said, why are you guys so bad? Why do you miss free throws? I didn't know how to deal with the derision, so I just decided to stay home from school. Seemed like the best option. Every time we lost, I would stay home from school the next day. Until I had that one teacher. Pretty sure we could go around this room and we all had that one teacher. I'll give you a second if you can remember their name, remember their face. That joke they told, it wasn't funny, but you still laughed. Mine was Mr. Phillips. He was also a world history teacher. It's funny how that works. I remember he came up to my desk and he said, Mr. Gonzalez, don't take this the wrong way, but I really don't think you're sick every time the basketball team loses. He was right. But he said this to me not in front of the whole class. Sometimes if you're like myself, you think if you CC everybody on the email, then they'll get the point that they should correct their behavior. Shame is usually not the best motivator. Or if it works, it doesn't work when you're not there. And he waited till every student left and he said, Mr. Gonzalez, the reason I teach history is about great men and women and millions of more that will never mention their names is because they gave everything they had, win or lose, life or death. He explained individuals that we've heard about before. Abraham Lincoln, who, lost over 8 elections, but now he's on every single penny in the United States. Of an inventor who tried over 1,000 different times to invent the light bulb. Reporters came up to him and said, you've tried over 1,000 times. Don't you think it's time to give up? He said, well, I haven't failed 1,000 times. I just found 1,000 ways not to get it right. As a teacher, I'd be careful telling that to my students because they'd come up to my desk after a test and said, I just found another way not to pass. You got to be careful. Thomas Edison is not the world's biggest failure. He's probably one of the greatest inventors our country ever had. Risk-taking, curiosity. Mr. Phillips also told me he'd give me 5 points on the next exam if I came to school after we lost. Everyone needs an incentive. And I said, yeah. And one day turned into 2, which turned to 3. And I went from barely playing a sport I didn't enjoy to being all-state for the state of New Jersey by my senior year. I went from barely passing my classes to being top 20 in my high school senior year. Even got selected, I remember, to play on this team to represent the whole state of New Jersey in the high school basketball national championships right here in Florida, just in Jacksonville. And we won. High school basketball national champions, a gold medal around my neck. A coach said he was going to take us someplace very special to eat that night because we were national champions. He took us to Denny's. And Denny's is a great establishment, but the Grand Slam only goes so far if you've been there. And I remember sitting there, and I wasn't going to, Division I university, full scholarship, anything of that nature. I was considered too small to play that position at that level, so I went to a small Division III college called Montclair State University. And Montclair State's a great school, but as I mentioned, we don't give scholarships, we don't play on ESPN, and our jerseys weren't even made by Nike. My 3 qualifications as a high school senior for a good college, they didn't have any of them. And I remember Mr. Phillips telling me, hey, you give your best. Just because you're going Division III doesn't mean you can't practice like Division I. And so I was curious, so I found out what Division I players did, and I did it every single morning at 5 a.m. I would get dropped off by the bus to the college, or my dad would drop me off before work, and I would shoot 500 shots before my classes started. Our family couldn't afford a dorm on campus, so I'd put 2 chairs together in the library and sleep there in between classes and read my Bible. And it's amazing what happens when we give everything. And let's be honest, we're surrounded by a culture that only goes halfway. You're surrounded by individuals, don't need to name names. You see it. They go about halfway. When things are good, they give a little more. When things are bad, they give a little bit less. Just about here. But we give everything. Not because it's a duty, but as Rick said, because we love, because we care, because it's not a t-shirt. It can be infectious. And I was blessed to not stay at Montclair State. I was eventually called up to play in the NBA. I don't get picked as high as Kevin Durant. He's a top draft pick that year, but I finally make my way to Los Angeles as a free agent. And I'll never forget the first day of training camp. They put us in this room. It's about the size of this room. Outside the door, it said weight room something, or we're going to lift some weights. But when we get in the room, there's no weights. There's no barbells, no benches, no dumbbells. I go up to the trainer. I remember asking, how can you see how strong we are if there's no equipment? He said, Mr. Gonzalez, we don't need all that. We just need to know if you can lift yourself. I didn't understand what he meant, but I soon learned. See, the first day of training camp, they put 5 minutes on the clock, and they simply told us to begin. Begin meant we had to do push-ups for 5 minutes straight without stopping. It's nearly impossible. And when you can't push yourself up another inch, your arms begin to shake something awful like this. They would ask us to turn on our sides and hold this thing called a plank. Maybe you've done this one before too, and you can barely hold yourself up. And if your knees touch the ground, they get you up and ask you to run full court sprints, no jogging. The second your pace slows because you get this pain right underneath your rib. If you're a runner, you know what I'm talking about, it becomes unbearable. They would line you up against the back wall and do the high school favorite, you might remember, something called wall sits. Yeah. 2 players get cut from the team within the first 20 minutes of training camp. They were handed plane tickets and simply told to have a good life. I'm scared to death 2 weeks in, and as I'm doing push-ups, an amazing idea comes to my mind. It said, John Paul, you're out of shape. See, unfortunately, sometimes we can forget what gets us to certain levels. And I'm ashamed to say I started blaming everything for the reason I wasn't performing well. My first game, I don't play well. I go up to the team manager and I tell him that I'm used to wearing Jordan shoes, but Adidas was a sponsor of the NBA at the time, so they gave me Adidas. My shoes are throwing off my jump shot. Blame your equipment, it just makes sense. And 2 games in, still not performing well. I talked with the assistant coach and I debated with him whether the teammates they paired me with, we just didn't have good enough chemistry yet. And I remember by my 3rd game, I had the audacity to call up my agent and I asked him how long the coach was under contract. I wasn't sure if he really understood my abilities and talents to make sure I'd be an asset for this team. I asked for a trade. But it's amazing when you're face down doing a push-up every morning, you start to realize very quickly there's only one thing that keeps you face down on the ground. And it's very little to do with the sneakers on your feet, the people on your right and left, or even the people above you. It's yourself, your own body weight. And don't take this the wrong way. I know there's things in all of our professions that make it incredibly challenging to give our best. Sometimes we just feel like we're running uphill every single day. New rules, evaluation systems, lines move. But at the end of the day, it's about what we choose to bring. See, one of the things I realized when I got out there is a simple equation. And they taught it to us, and I wasn't the best in algebra, but you probably have heard of this equation before. They put this equation on the board, and it was simple. It said L is greater than or equal to the letter C. And they said, guys, we're not trying to give you a math lesson here, but we're just saying if you're going to stay on this team, you better live by this equation. It's an ecological equation. Everything that lives on this planet must abide by this equation. L is greater than or equal to the letter C. And in that equation, it's simple. C stands for change, and L stands for learning. And basically anything that chooses to learn greater than or equal to the level of change around them, it won't just survive, it'll thrive. That's what you came here for, to learn as well. But it's interesting because anything that chooses not to starts to become extinct. I'm pretty sure we could all, don't have to name names, we all had leaders in our life, maybe a coach, maybe an individual. They swore they were doing a great job. But behind them, everyone else could see they were becoming extinct. See, the tough thing about learning is to truly learn, we have to admit that we don't know. It takes humility. University of Pennsylvania has a study on resilience. You could get your master's degree in it, and they attribute 3 factors to resilience: humility, faithfulness, and gratitude. Actually started, they still teach you at Fort Benning, Georgia, to prepare individuals to be placed in difficult hotspots all around the globe. And they said more than even IQ and sometimes physical attributes, it's humility, faithfulness, and gratitude that can help someone become and stay resilient. See, when I came to Union City, back from playing basketball, I wanted to help kids so bad. And I was getting so discouraged because most of my students weren't making it to the end of the school year. And it was so easy to sit in the teacher's lounge and said, man, if we just have a better mayor, my students wouldn't get shot at night or join a gang. But I began to be haunted by the quote, and maybe you've heard this one too. It says, the arrogant look for someone to blame, but the humble look for something to solve. I was a teacher, but I wasn't very teachable. And so I started doing some investigation on my city. My master's was about my city. And I found out the reason so many individuals are going in that lifestyle is because after school programming, we didn't have any. Boys and Girls Club, YMCA, not in our town. And if you didn't know, Union City is actually the most densely populated city in the whole entire United States, 28th in the world, 90,000 people in 1 square mile. So when 400 kids try out for our basketball team, you can only really take 30 on a varsity and JV team. You got 370 kids that want to be part of a team, but really they don't love basketball that much. They just want to be part of a family. So when they cut, they join one. They join a gang, and the cycle continues. So I said, man, what if we had a building where they could go? So I start renting this old abandoned building on the edge of our city. It's nothing glamorous, 6,000 square feet. And I said, let's invite everybody. No water bills needed. New York City, New Jersey, doesn't matter. You have a parent signature, you can come. And I gave out 10,000 flyers. And we got 5 kids. If you've ever started an initiative or a program, you know the feeling, don't you? Everybody knew about it, but nobody showed up to the meeting, right? And they ask you about it, of course, the next day, like they didn't know. Like, hey, what was that thing you were doing, or how was it? And you sent them 10 emails about it. And I remember having to walk to school the next day, and everyone asking. And I said, well, we got 5. People will pat you on the back. They'll say, God bless you for maybe trying to implement some of the things you learned this week. But honestly, it'll just feel more condescending than encouraging. And I remember sitting in my room, and an administrator came in and said, Mr. Gonzalez, it's very altruistic what you're doing, but do you really think it's wise to rent a building of that size in our city, on a 30-year teacher's salary just for 5 kids? You're not their dad. And I said, well, thank you for your financial concern, but we rent it by the month. And you're right, I'm not their dad. But But I just really believe if those 5 kids come back tonight and one of them brings a friend, we'll have 6. And with 6 kids in an abandoned building with a basketball hoop on the side, man, we could play some great 3-on-3 basketball. Small goals. And that was 7 years ago. And now we have 3,168 kids that come. And you know, and when people ask me what's the greatest part, the greatest part is on a typical day at 3 o'clock. When we open the doors, I don't have to be there anymore. Not because I don't want to be, I'm still there, but I don't have to be. Because it's 5 kids in my history classroom that I coached in basketball. They open the doors now. They're our program director. They're our trainers. They're our mentors. See it. There's this quote by John Maxwell, you probably have heard it before, and it's a little bit harsh, but it says, if you think you're a leader and you turn around and no one's following, you're just out for a walk. It's a little harsh, but man, it's true. I mean, every single one of us is so talented in this room. I mean, we could start organizations overnight with ChatGPT. It'll take care of all the bylaws for us. Like, we could literally build whole entire, almost civilizations by ourselves. But if it's just us, like we said before, we could go fast, but is it really going to last? Yeah. If we wait for others to walk along, do they walk slower? Do some of them walk with a limp? Well, let's be honest, we all got a limp. We just learned how to cover it better. It takes some time, and they'll do stuff that makes us frustrated. They'll do stuff that we're like, what are you thinking? You can't tell a parent to F off. Like, you can't do that, but at the same time, there's moments that I catch myself watching them walk in their purpose. And they give a little glance back at you. And there's a smile on their face that only comes from letting them serve in the way they know how. And it means everything. But see, like we talked about, this also means we've got to still be willing to learn. And so working with the Attorney General's office, I started realizing that there's still a large amount of students that are not coming to our facility. And it's not about coming to our facility. We just want to give them a place to go to feel like a family. And so I said, well, if they don't come to us, we should go to them. That's what it means to truly care, truly love, truly be inclusive. I could ask you to sit at my table all I want, but I know that's intimidating. What if I sat at your table? And so as crazy as it sounds, I'm a little nervous, but I think that's a good thing when we're leaders and we're committed, we're willing to love, willing to stay connected. It's risky. We found this army truck, and it looks like a normal army truck, except for the fact that in about 15 minutes, you can fold it out into this. And so what we're gonna do, I know it's a little crazy, but we asked all our law enforcement, give us the areas that are in the most need, Camden, Patterson, Newark. And I said, what if we set this up right in the middle of the government housing when things are the worst? And just invite people for a workout, invite people to be a part of it. Hey, $50 for the person who can do the most pull-ups. Let's give it a shot. Some people say it's crazy. I think it's willing to try. Let's take it to them. I think we each in our own way know what that looks like. Doesn't mean you gotta go buy a 1982 AMG. It might be the way we talk to people, meet them at the door, say thank you, even if it's just a small gesture. Everything matters. Everything counts. See, when I speak to the Giants, a lot of people think I talk about football. I think you'll realize by now that when I speak to the Giants, I will never talk to them about football. They'll know more about how to try to beat Jalen Hurts or Dak Prescott than I ever will. I would not waste their time. But when I spoke to them that night, the first night, before the game against the Jets, I only asked them one question. I said, what does it mean to be committed? Now, some guys said this and other guys said that, so I tried to use an analogy. I thought they could all understand. I said, you know what, guys, what would it look like if we're playing a huge game of poker right here in this room right now, and you were to push all your chips in the middle of this team room? What does that signify? Justin Tuck was a defensive lineman on the team. I remember he raised his hand. He said, well, that means you're all in. You're ready to win. You're done going halfway. You're done waiting for someone else to, run out of chips. You're willing to try your best. I said, all right, now what would happen if you push your chips in the middle and, you get nervous about the whole thing. So then a couple of seconds later, you pull them back, tell everyone you were just kidding. I remember he smiled and he said, if you're playing poker with these guys, you're definitely going to get punched in the face. I said, Justin, that's a violent solution, but you're right. We would never dream of pushing our chips in the middle and then, playing it, whether here or table in Vegas, you're not allowed to touch the chips. You're right. But I said, why do we think it's okay to do with our lives? Why do we say we're going to be committed and when things get a little difficult, we start playing an exit strategy or making an excuse? And so I gave him a chip that night. Wasn't anything special about the chip. It wasn't magic. It wasn't blessed. Technically, it was from Walmart. I gave him a marker. And I said, guys, I want you to take this chip, and if you mean business, you sign it. Put it someplace you see it. When you see it, you just let it ask yourself the simple question, am I giving my best right now? Not next week, not next year, but now. Some guys said they took the chip and they put it in their locker to see before they hit the field, before they played. They said they did this because they were just waiting for year 7. If you didn't know, in the NFL, year 7 means you can collect a full retirement, full pension. You don't got to play another down. We need a couple more years. And they said that they didn't want to live that way anymore. They said they wanted to remember that they did it as a team, together, for the person next to them. And that's why they put it in their locker. Other guys said they took the chip and they said, you know what, John Paul, I've been playing football for 14 years. I've been all in for football. But I'm ashamed to say I've not been very faithful as a husband or committed as a father for my family. This chip needs to go in the middle of my kitchen table. I need to change. I remember even one of the guys, he took a chip and he Twitter messaged me 2 weeks later to show me he actually got the words all in tattooed on his chest, Antrell. I said, Antrell, we always have that one friend at the party that goes too far with everything, right? If that's you, that's fine. I said, Antrell, I never told you to do that, but he actually gave me a pretty good reply. He said, man, John Paul, I did it because, man, if it's just a t-shirt, he said, I can always put it on and take it off, just to look good while people are watching, make them think I'm doing my job. But I said, I want to be reminded that when I wake up in the morning and I look in the bathroom mirror, it's going to be the things I do that nobody sees that's really going to make the most difference. And I think that's quite profound. Because as we said in the beginning, it's the sacrifices each one of you have made in this room, each one of us make, that nobody has any idea about. And you don't wear it like a badge. You don't flash it in their face. The times you did miss your daughter's soccer game because things went later. You don't want to make that a habit. But you didn't rub it everyone's face in it the next day and said, you know what you made me miss because of you? You came in with a smile and say, hey, how did all that work out last night? The times we cry in our car, I cry in my car because I need to get it out because I don't want to bring it in to my 3-year-old son and 6-year-old daughter. They have no idea. They just see daddy walk in with a smile on his face. It's worth it. I think that's what it means to be all in. See, some people ask me, what does it mean to you? First and foremost, it starts with my faith. But after that, I take off my wedding ring. Because unfortunately, over 80% of the students I work with don't know where their dad is right now. But I put 2 words on the inside of my wedding ring because, as I said, my 6-year-old, my 3-year-old, they're going to know who their dad is because I'm not going anywhere. I'm not going to be part of that statistic for my city. And where do I keep my chip? It's part of the story a lot of people say I'm foolish for, but honestly, if you're in this room right now, you stopped caring what people had to say a long time ago. I called up my agent in California and I said, I no longer want to play professional basketball. He said, what are you talking about? I said, I want to go back to my city and try to make a difference. He said, I don't understand. I said, well, honestly, buying Michael Jordan's shoes, they didn't change my life. Neither watching his highlights on YouTube. I said, the things that changed my life were the people who chose to be in it. My teachers, my coaches, my mom, my youth pastor. So I turned down professional basketball and came back home and became the greatest thing I thought I could become, a 9th grade world history teacher. And yeah, these are, honestly speaking, is there less zeros in the paycheck? Of course, from playing in professional basketball, but it's also in the paycheck that you don't see, that's not a zero. It's the times it's the times on a Sunday morning when you're at Whole Foods, you're just trying to get something quick, and you're not really put together, but someone calls your name from like 2 aisles away. You don't remember their name, but sometimes, they remember yours, right? And you're trying to like, hey, is Jennifer, Ashley, Bob, right? Like, and they're like, hey, it's okay. And they say, you were my manager. You were a leader, and my mom was going through a tough time having cancer, and you checked on me. You said, am I doing okay? Some days you said, it's all right, you can go, I'll take care of this for you. Thanks. I come to the realization, no matter how much money is in your bank account, you cannot pay for that 30-second conversation the way you feel after it. It is absolutely priceless. I believe it's divine, and it's the reason we've been put on this earth, to have conversations like that remind us it's not about us. It's about what we give, who we serve. Last question I'll answer, and I'll be done, is a lot of people say, John Paul, you didn't answer one thing. Why would the Giants call you up in the first place? Once again, you're just a 9th grade world history teacher. I said, well, I asked them that too. I was curious. I said, guys, how'd you even get my number? Their answer surprised me. See, when I first came back from Los Angeles, I wanted to help students so bad, but I didn't know in the state of New Jersey you need this thing called the teacher's certificate to teach. I was unaware. They didn't tell me that at Montclair State, so I had to go to night classes at St. Peter's College in Jersey City to get my certificate. But I still wanted to work with kids in the meantime. So I went to the only place that would let me work with them on a regular basis without a certificate, which was jail. I started going to juvenile detention centers across the state in Essex County and then also in Hudson County. And eventually one of the wardens recognized me and he said, hey, you're that basketball player. I watch basketball. What are you doing here in this jail? I said, well, I'm getting ready to be a teacher. So I tutor here on Tuesday nights and try to help the kids. He's like, man, let's start a basketball team in my jail. It could be like that movie, The Gridiron Gang, and you look a little bit like The Rock, so maybe this could work out. And I said, I don't think so, but sure, let's try. And we start playing basketball in jails, and it starts to work. Eventually, they get us funding, and they say, we want to buy uniforms, make this experience more authentic for behavior modification, for these guys and girls in here. Like, what do you want on the uniforms? It's got to be something tough because we play in jail, like, bar busters or jailbreakers, something tough. And I said, I don't want to go that route, but honestly, if I'm in charge of the program, I only want 2 words on our uniforms. And these are the uniforms worn in jail, and this is the word on the front. Some people say, John Paul, that really doesn't belong. I think there's no better place. There's a movie I enjoy a lot. You might have seen it before. The type of movies you've seen 50 times, but you keep it on in the background when you got to send an email or two. Mine is called The Shawshank Redemption. And there's a quote at the end of the movie that's really hard for me to forget and kind of gets me every time. It says, hope is a good thing, maybe the best of things, and a good thing never dies. Man, it's true. The times we can give others hope in a simple meeting, simple conversation, choosing to respond with kindness instead of anger, even though they showed us anger. Even though we see the worst of people some days, I know you see the worst of some individuals because they're in a stressful situation. Give them hope. And see, the greatest thing about giving hope, this is the reverse side in the jail when we change colors, is I feel when we've given others hope, they start to believe they can have this, a future. It's a symbiotic relationship. You really can't have one without the other, can you? They work together that way. And when the Giants called me up, I asked them how they got my number, and they said, well, 3 years ago, John Paul, you were in jail, weren't you? I said, well, I tutor in jail. It's a little different. They said, no, we know what you're doing in those juvenile detention centers. We know what you're doing in those jails. They said, you probably didn't know this, but one of those jails, the Hudson County Juvenile Detention Center, was in Secaucus, which is about half a mile away from the Giants practice facility. They said, you probably didn't know this, but one of the members of our team started hearing about what you were doing. Our chaplain heard about it, and he approached us and said, this would be good for the team to learn about how to use sports in a creative way, and a way that could help the community. Also, our first speaker canceled. Kind of like a sub or backup. And it's just interesting because when the students I work with, they see me on Sunday afternoons on the sidelines in Dallas, San Francisco, Detroit, and they say, man, Mr. Gonzalez, how do I get there? I like to remind them, man, I just wanted to do it for the least of these, and I thought nobody was watching. That's what we get to do every day. Isn't that what you do every day? You help those that maybe don't have proper representation. Maybe people stopped listening to or giving a fair shake a long time ago. You give them a shot. You're fair. You're just. You're honest. And you don't care who's watching. Because for you, this whole all-in thing wasn't a t-shirt either, was it? It was a lifestyle. Because you chose greatness. Now you might have noticed at your table that there's chips. First thing first about the chips, please don't try to bring them to a local casino. You can't get any money for them. Save your gas. But I know I'd be honored. We'd be honored. Take the chip. On the back, it's blank. It's not because we couldn't put the NACA logo on both sides. That's where we sign. I personally don't know what all-in looks like to you as you head home today, maybe tomorrow morning. But I'd encourage you to take a moment and sign it. Put it someplace you see it. Maybe for some of you, it'll go on the edge of your desk. There's some courageous conversations like Mr. Phillips had to have with me to individuals saying, hey, listen, I believe you could do better. Call them up, not push them down. Maybe there's some admonishment you need to give. Hey, listen, great job. I'm sorry I haven't said it earlier, but great job. Maybe that chip is not about your desk and your profession. Maybe that chip, it goes home with you. As a father, as a mother to your family, sister, brother, son or daughter. Or maybe that chip, if I may be so bold, maybe that chip is just for you. There's many of you in this room, you give so much. When we serve our communities, we give so much. And we never take time for ourselves. We always say next week. Once the busy period dies down, does it ever die down? It feels like we've been on a treadmill for at least 5 years and it has not stopped or gotten slower. Maybe that chip is just for you to say, you know what? For me to be all in for others, I need to take some time each day to be all in for myself. Maybe that's a 30-minute Peloton ride. Maybe that's a 15-minute walk. Maybe it's just to yell in your car for 5 minutes. I don't know what it looks like to you. But I learned the hard way. You can't pour into others with an empty cup. But in order for your cup to get full, it's got to stay still long enough to be poured into. I know we always say, I don't have time. In order to have time for others, we need to sometimes make time for ourselves. As I mentioned, I don't know what it looks like to you, but it's our hope. You take the chip, you sign it, put it someplace you see it. You continue to show your family, your friends, those you work with, those you love, even yourself, that for you, this all-in thing was never a slogan on a t-shirt. It was always a lifestyle that gives hope and a future to the communities and the individuals you serve. God bless you, God. Thank you for your time.